I could hear the music from across the lawn, soft violins, clinking glasses, people laughing, waiting. All eyes were on the altar, on the empty aisle, waiting for the bride, waiting for me. But I wasn't there. I was hiding behind the gardener's shed, in a wedding dress I had dreamed of since I was a teenager, with my phone trembling in my hands. My bouquet had already fallen to the ground, forgotten, because 30 minutes before I was supposed to walk down that aisle, I found out the truth. My fiancé, the man I was about to marry, was sleeping with my sister, and not just once. They had been together for months. And the worst part? She was the one who had introduced us. She played matchmaker, helped me plan the entire wedding, stood by my side like the perfect maid of honor. She even helped me pick the dress, smiled at my engagement photos, held my hand through every doubt, every fear, every moment I thought he was the one. And all along, she was just waiting for her chance. So no, I didn't walk down that aisle. I didn't say I do, and I didn't cry in some locked bathroom either, because that was the moment I decided. If my sister thought she could stab me in the back and get away with it, she clearly didn't know who she was messing with. And this is the story of how I made sure she'd never forget it. If you were in my shoes, would you confront them at the altar or disappear without a word? Drop your answer in the comments before we go any further. If you had asked me a year ago who I trusted the most in the world, I would have said my sister. Without even thinking, Natalie and I weren't just close. We were inseparable. She was my older sister by 2 years, and growing up, she was the one person who always made me feel safe. We shared clothes, secrets, heartbreaks. When our parents divorced, we clung to each other like life rafts. She was the first person I called when I got my first job offer. And when I met Daniel, well, of course she was the first one I introduced him to. It was at a mutual friend's housewarming party. He was handsome in a way that didn't try too hard, tall, with this quiet confidence that made everyone listen when he spoke. We were both holding glasses of cheap rosé and pretending to care about the art on the walls. Natalie was the one who nudged me toward him, literally. She whispered, "You're staring. Go talk to him or I will." I laughed. I thought she was joking. I didn't realize she meant it. Daniel and I clicked instantly. He was smart, funny in a dry, understated way, and surprisingly sincere. He asked real questions. He remembered small details. And when he asked for my number at the end of the night, Natalie gave me this huge smile and mouthed, "Told you so." I thought she was happy for me. I thought I was lucky, having a sister and a boyfriend who got along so well. The three of us would hang out constantly. Brunches, game nights, random movie marathons in my apartment. Natalie would always stay after Daniel left. We'd analyze everything he said, every little gesture, like teenage girls again. And sometimes, I'd catch her watching him when she thought no one was looking, but I brushed it off. I told myself she was just being protective, that she was just looking out for me. But then little things started to feel off, like the way Daniel's phone would buzz when he was at my place, and he'd flip it over quickly, or how Natalie would suddenly get quiet when I mentioned something cute he'd done. Once, I asked her if she thought he was the one, and she hesitated, just for a second, before answering, "Sure, I guess." I guess? Natalie, the woman who helped me plan fake weddings and scrapbooks when we were kids, couldn't muster more enthusiasm than I guess? Still, I ignored it. I was planning a future, a life. I had a ring on my finger, and the date was already set. The doubts were small enough to tuck away. Until one night, about 2 months before the wedding, Natalie and I went out for drinks. It was just the two of us. Sisters' night out, like old times. We were tipsy, giggling, reminiscing about dumb things we did as teenagers. And then she said something I couldn't forget. We were talking about first loves, and she looked at me and said, "Isn't it crazy how you can fall for someone, and then someone else comes along and you feel it even stronger? Like maybe you got it wrong the first time?" I laughed at first, but something in her voice was different. It wasn't a random comment. It felt personal. When I asked her who she was talking about, she waved it off, said it was no one. But the way she avoided my eyes made my stomach twist. And for the first time, I felt something I never imagined I'd feel toward my own sister. Suspicion. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't let myself believe it, but I started to pay attention after that, to the way they talked to each other, to how comfortable they were, to moments I'd previously ignored, like how he'd always offer to drive her home when we were all together, or how she never let me borrow her phone anymore, even just to Google something. It was like I was walking through my life with a blindfold I didn't even realize was there, and suddenly, it slipped a little. I wasn't ready to see everything yet, but I was starting to. You know that feeling when something's wrong, but you can't prove it? It's like a splinter under your skin, small, invisible, but it aches. And no matter how much you try to pretend it's nothing, you feel it. Every second. That's how it was with Daniel and Natalie. Everything looked normal on the surface. They acted the same, spoke the same, smiled at each other like it was nothing. But something in me had changed. And once that switch flipped, I couldn't turn it off. I started noticing things I hadn't before. Or maybe I had noticed them, but refused to connect the dots. Like the way Daniel would pause before answering when I asked where he'd been. Not lie, not exactly. Just hesitate long enough to make me wonder. Or how Natalie stopped volunteering to help with wedding stuff. She used to be the first to text me with Pinterest boards and dress fittings and playlist ideas. But as the date got closer, she suddenly had work or needed space. And then there was that weekend. Daniel told me he was going on a last-minute business trip to Boston. It didn't make much sense. His company never sent people out of state without notice. But I nodded, trusted him. That same weekend, Natalie posted a photo on her Instagram story. Just a view from a window, trees, sky, nothing identifiable. But something about the filter looked familiar. So I looked closer. I screenshot it. And later that night, I compared it to a photo Daniel had sent me from his hotel window. Same angle, same skyline, same goddamn view. My heart dropped. I tried to tell myself it was a coincidence. That maybe they were in the same hotel. Maybe his company booked a room next to hers. But what were the odds? So I did something I'd never done before. I went through his email. I know. That's the point in every story where someone says, you shouldn't snoop if you're not ready to find something. But let me tell you something. If I hadn't looked, I might have married that man. I might have stood at that altar, smiling at a sister who had already taken everything from me. There were no explicit messages. Nothing obvious. They were smart. Too smart to leave a trail of love notes or steamy pictures. But I found receipts. 2 first-class tickets booked under Daniel's travel points. Check-ins to boutique hotels that weren't in Boston. Dinner reservations for 2. Spa treatments for 2. At resorts I'd never been invited to. He told me he hated massages. Guess he just hated them with me. Still, even with all of that, I didn't confront him. I wasn't ready. I needed more. I started watching them. I know how that sounds. Paranoid. Desperate. But when the person you love is betraying you, and the person helping him do it shares your blood, there's no playbook. There's just instinct. And mine was screaming. One night, I invited them both over for dinner. A test. I made his favorite, truffle risotto, and poured just enough wine to loosen tongues. I watched how they sat, watched how they didn't make eye contact, how they tried too hard not to act close. And then, when Natalie went to the kitchen for more wine, Daniel followed her, offering to help. They were gone for less than a minute, but when she came back, her lipstick was smudged, and when he returned, his collar was twisted. That was the moment. The first time I felt anger more than heartbreak. It wasn't a suspicion anymore. It was a certainty. They were together, and they thought I was too blind, too trusting, too in love to see it. But they were wrong, because I saw everything now. I didn't say anything that night. I played along, laughed, cleaned the dishes, kissed him goodbye like always, but I barely slept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, heart racing with something new, something sharp and alive. Not grief, not jealousy, strategy. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. No. I was going to do what they never expected. I was going to smile, walk down the aisle like nothing was wrong, and let the perfect trap fall right into place. It happened on a Wednesday, not a dramatic day. No storm, no tragic music. Just a boring, cloudy, regular Wednesday that started like any other. I was working from home, drinking coffee out of a chipped mug, half listening to an audiobook while checking emails. Daniel had slept over the night before, left early for a meeting, and forgot his laptop on my kitchen table. I wasn't snooping. I really wasn't. I reached for it with the simple intention of closing the screen and plugging it in to charge. Just something nice to do for the man I was going to marry. But when I moved the mouse, the screen lit up. No password, no lock screen, just open. And staring back at me was an email draft. Unsent, but typed. Ready, like someone had written it in a rush and then hesitated. The subject line was blank. The body was short. I can't keep doing this with you at her place. You said we'd talk after the wedding. When? I stared at it for a full minute before it registered. Her place? My place? At first, I told myself it had to be someone else. A mistake. But the draft was addressed to Natalie. Natalie, my sister, my maid of honor, the woman who held my hand while I picked out the dress I was supposed to wear in front of everyone I loved. I clicked out of the draft, heart pounding in my chest. My fingers were trembling, but they kept moving, like they weren't mine anymore. I opened his messages, his downloads, his folders, everything. I didn't want to find anything. I hoped I wouldn't, but that draft had already opened a door inside me that I couldn't close anymore. And that's when I found it. A photo, hidden in a folder labeled Receipts. At first glance, it looked innocent. A balcony, warm light, sunset in the background. But then I looked closer. Daniel, in a robe. Natalie, in one of those silky, slinky dresses she always wore when she wanted to feel effortless. They weren't kissing. They didn't have to be. He had his arm around her waist, and she was leaning into him, laughing at something only the two of them knew. His head was tilted toward her, and the way they looked at each other, it was intimacy, raw, unfiltered, unafraid. It wasn't just sex. It wasn't a fling. It was real. The timestamp? 3 weeks ago. The same weekend, Daniel told me he had food poisoning and couldn't come to my cousin's baby shower. I remembered holding his hand that Friday, telling him to rest, that I'd bring soup the next day. He told me not to bother, said he just wanted to sleep. He was sleeping, all right, in a boutique hotel in Santa Barbara, with my sister. I closed the laptop slowly, like if I moved too fast, I'd break the fragile thread holding my sanity together. I couldn't cry, not then. I just sat there, staring at my reflection in the dark screen, wondering how long I had been the fool in my own life story. Later that night, I pulled out my wedding binder, the one Natalie helped me organize, color-coded tabs and all. I flipped through the pages, flowers, playlists, guest lists, seating charts. I stared at her name, printed neatly beside the words, Maid of Honor. I don't know how long I sat there. An hour? Maybe more. The apartment was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that presses in on your chest and makes it hard to breathe. That's when the sadness shifted. It was like a candle snuffing out. One moment I was heartbroken, paralyzed, and the next I was clear, focused, because this wasn't just betrayal. This was calculated, sustained, rehearsed. She helped me plan this wedding knowing she was sleeping with the groom. She smiled in my photos, held my dress while I tried on heels, laughed with me while we drank champagne and dreamed about honeymoons. And all the while, she was picking out my life for herself. So no, I wasn't going to cry over that. I was going to take it back. All of it. Not by yelling, not by telling them I knew. I was going to give them exactly what they wanted. A wedding, a ceremony, an audience, a stage. And right at the center of it, I'd be standing there, in white, with the whole world watching, and they would never see it coming. Let the show begin. I needed to see it. Not just screenshots, not emails, not blurred photos of them laughing on a balcony. I needed to see them, together, with my own eyes, because some twisted part of me still wanted to believe I was wrong, that I was misinterpreting everything, that it wasn't what it looked like. So I made a plan. It started with Daniel. I told him I wanted to surprise Natalie. A little thank you for all her help with the wedding. A spa day, just the two of us. I pretended I had no idea he was seeing her in secret. He smiled, told me I was so thoughtful, kissed my forehead. I wanted to throw up. Instead, I booked the spa day and canceled it an hour before. Told Natalie I had food poisoning. Fitting, right? Then I waited. 2 days later, on a Saturday morning, Daniel told me he had to run some errands. He kissed me goodbye, and I pretended to go back to sleep. Instead, I got in my car and followed him. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely think. Every red light felt like a scream. I was shaking, half adrenaline, half panic, but I needed to know. He drove across town. Not to work, not to the gym, to a little condo complex I didn't recognize. And 10 minutes later, I saw her. Natalie. She came out wearing an oversized hoodie I recognized as his, the same one he wore to my apartment just 2 nights earlier. She looked around, cautious, then walked straight up to his car and got in. No hesitation, no guilt. And when he leaned over to kiss her, that was it. That was the moment. Not a theory, not a maybe. It was real. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me upright. And I didn't cry. I just watched them drive away, side by side, like they hadn't stolen everything from me. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I drove aimlessly for hours. I parked at the beach and stared at the water. I went through every memory, every fake smile, every lie. I replayed conversations that now made perfect sense, like when Natalie told me she wasn't ready to fall in love, like when Daniel said he hated complicated families, like when they both insisted on separate hotel rooms for the bachelor or bachelorette trip they were helping to plan. It all clicked. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was intimate, layered, emotionally cruel. They had been building something behind my back for months, years maybe. While I built a future, they built a secret. And yet, I didn't call either of them out. Not that night, not the next day, because what's the point of confronting liars? They only lie harder. They twist the truth, cry, play innocent, and I didn't want their tears. I wanted their silence, their shame, their loss. So instead, I got to work. I went into full bride mode, smiling, posing, tasting cakes, finalizing menus. I sent Natalie photos of the dress she helped pick. I let Daniel believe I was still madly in love, and all the while I documented everything. Screenshots, photos, bank statements, dates. I made a timeline, labeled every lie, every betrayal. I backed it all up on a flash drive labeled wedding playlist just in case. I became the perfect fiancé, the perfect little sister, and no one suspected a thing, but something inside me had changed forever. The girl who cried herself to sleep when she first found that photo, she was gone. In her place stood someone sharper, colder, focused. And as the wedding got closer, the idea that had been forming quietly in the back of my mind started to take shape. What if I didn't cancel it? What if I let it happen? The dress, the aisle, the vows, the celebration. What if I turned the wedding into the very stage where I revealed the truth, not with a tantrum, not with screaming, but with grace, with precision, the kind of moment people never forget. And just like that, the plan was born. I don't know how I survived those next few weeks. Have you ever had to smile while your whole world was breaking inside you? Sit across from people you love, people who betrayed you, and pretend you didn't know? Pretend you weren't quietly bleeding? That was me. Every single day. The hardest part wasn't the lying. It was the pretending I still believed them. I had to let Daniel kiss me, hold me, make future plans. I had to let Natalie send me memes, help me choose napkin colors, stand in bridal shops pretending to care. And I did it. All of it. Because the only thing stronger than heartbreak is purpose. But late at night, when the world went quiet, that's when it hit me. I'd lie awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on my chest. The wedding dress hung in the corner of my room like a ghost, a reminder of what was supposed to be and what could never be again. I started having these little panic attacks, nothing dramatic, just moments where I'd be in the middle of folding laundry or brushing my teeth, and suddenly, my throat would close up, like grief had fingers, and it was tightening around my neck, because this wasn't just about a cheating fiancé. This was her, my sister. She knew me better than anyone. She knew every fear, every secret, every weakness, and she used them. Natalie didn't just take my man. She invaded my life, and that was the part that hurt the most. She didn't even try to lie well, didn't even care that I might find out. It was like I didn't matter, like she looked at everything I had and decided she deserved it more. There were nights I screamed into my pillow just to release the pressure building in my chest. Nights I couldn't eat, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. But every time I thought about calling the wedding off, every time I looked at the ring on my finger and imagined throwing it in Daniel's face, I'd remember that photo, the way she looked at him, the way he looked at her, like I was the outsider, like I was the joke. And that's when the pain turned into something else, fuel. Because if they thought they were going to walk away clean, start a life together while I faded into the background, then they had no idea who I really was. I wasn't the kind of girl who got left behind. I wasn't going to burn down the house. I was going to redecorate it with their shame. So I gave them the performance of a lifetime. I let Daniel think I was head over heels in love. I laughed at his bad jokes, kissed him like I hadn't seen his emails, let him plan our honeymoon to the same resort he once took her to. I let Natalie believe she was still the star of my bridal party. I let her zip me into the wedding dress. Let her cry during fittings. Let her toast to eternal love with cheap champagne and fake tears. And the more I pretended, the more they slipped. Daniel stopped hiding his phone. Natalie stopped pretending she felt guilty. They got comfortable again, arrogant, lazy. But I was watching. I recorded phone calls, logged their locations, backed up messages on an encrypted drive. Every lie was another puzzle piece. And when I put them all together, it was beautiful and painful. Because no matter how strong I looked, no matter how sharp the plan became, I was still grieving. Grieving the version of myself who believed in them. The girl who believed love was enough. The sister who thought family meant something. That version of me was gone now. In her place stood someone harder, smarter, someone who didn't just want justice. She wanted to teach them a lesson, one they'd never forget. It started with the guest list. I went through every name, one by one, with a kind of ruthless calm I didn't know I was capable of. If you'd ever lied to me, doubted me, talked behind my back, or chosen my sister over me in any of those harmless little family disagreements, you were off the list, no exceptions. And then I added someone. His name was Logan, Natalie's ex. Not just any ex, the one who had left her crying on my couch for weeks, swearing she'd never speak to him again, calling him a narcissistic jerk with commitment issues. What she didn't know is that Logan had stayed friends with Daniel, and I knew, deep in my gut, that if there was one person who could make Natalie spiral, it was Logan. So I sent him a handwritten invitation, elegant, personal. And I included a note. It would mean a lot to me if you came. He replied the next day. I'll be there. Wouldn't miss it. That was phase 1. Phase 2? Psychological warfare. At the rehearsal dinner, I requested a special entree for Natalie. Something elegant. Lobster ravioli. She's mildly allergic to shellfish. Nothing deadly. Just enough to puff her face up and leave her looking like she got stung by a bee. She'd told me that years ago, in one of those vulnerable sister talks. The kind you only have when you still believe your sister would never hurt you. I watched her take the first bite with this smug little grin, like she owned the night. 20 minutes later, she was blotchy, swollen, and running to the bathroom in heels she couldn't quite walk in. I followed after her, pretending to be concerned. Oh my God, Nat, are you okay? Did they not know about the allergy? She could barely answer, too busy digging through her purse for antihistamines. I helped her to her car with a straight face, then walked back into that dinner and raised a glass like nothing happened. After that, I got bolder. With Daniel, I started planting subtle doubts. I told him I was anxious, nervous about marriage, unsure about forever. I asked him questions that made him shift in his seat. Do you think people change their minds at the altar? What if someone has doubts but doesn't say anything until it's too late? He played it cool, smiled, reassured me, but I could see it, the flicker of fear behind his eyes. He started texting more often, showing up with flowers, being unusually affectionate, because deep down, he thought I might leave him. Good. Let him think that. With Natalie, I did the opposite. I acted like we were closer than ever. I gushed about how perfect Daniel was. I sent her pictures of table settings and honeymoon outfits. I asked her to help me write my vows. She ate it up. That's the thing about people like her. They love feeling superior. She believed she was getting away with it, that she had fooled me, that she was winning. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was building my case. I logged every message, saved every confirmation email, every receipt, every late-night text that didn't add up. I organized it all, labeled, dated, time-stamped. I even bought a small flash drive shaped like a diamond. Fitting, right? I labeled it Wedding Playlist and tucked it into my clutch, right next to the lipstick Natalie bought me. And then, I emptied the joint account. Daniel and I had opened it months ago to manage wedding expenses. He had transferred a large chunk into it, part of his contribution, part of some gift from his parents. I waited until 1 week before the wedding and transferred every dollar into a private account in my name. Legally, I was protected. And emotionally, I didn't feel a damn thing. They had taken something from me. My peace, my trust, my family. It was time I took something back. And the best part? They had no idea. Natalie was still smiling in photos, still sending me Pinterest links and asking about the playlist. Daniel was still playing the doting groom, still calling me his angel, still pretending to be the man I fell in love with. But their story was already collapsing. They just didn't know it yet. And I was going to let them keep smiling, right up until the moment I ruined both of them. If you were in my shoes, would you go through with the wedding just to expose them? Or would you walk away and leave them both wondering? Let me know in the comments. I really want to know what you would have done. The week of the wedding, I became someone else entirely. Outwardly, I was glowing, blissful, the image of a bride in love. Inside, cold, focused, untouchable. Every morning started the same. Coffee, yoga, deep breaths. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't afraid. I was ready, because I wasn't walking toward a fairy tale. I was walking toward the final act of a performance I had been perfecting for weeks. Everyone thought I was preparing for the happiest day of my life, but I was preparing for theirs. Daniel, of course, was being the perfect groom. He brought me flowers, booked us a couple's massage, wrote me a long, cheesy note about how he couldn't wait to call me his wife. I even teared up reading it. On cue. He thought my tears were from joy. Natalie was in full matron of honor mode. She planned a final brunch with my bridesmaids, bought matching silk robes, even gifted me a perfume she said would make me unforgettable. It was the same one she used to wear when we were younger. The irony wasn't lost on me. I let her curl my hair, help me with my veil. I let her sit on the edge of my bed the night before the wedding, talking about how proud she was, how perfect Daniel was for me. And all I kept thinking was, you really don't see it coming, do you? The wedding venue was stunning, a vineyard just outside the city, secluded, surrounded by trees, with soft string lights and white roses everywhere. The exact kind of place Natalie once described as her dream wedding location. I picked it on purpose. On the surface, everything looked magical. The guests were arriving from out of town, gushing about the setting, the menu, the dress code. People toasted to our future. My family hugged me. His family smiled at me like I was already one of them. They didn't know I had a flash drive tucked inside my clutch, labeled Wedding Playlist. It held everything: screenshots, photos, receipts, voice recordings, evidence, itemized and time-stamped, the full picture of what Daniel and Natalie had done. And yet, I wasn't nervous. I was calm, because the beauty of the plan was in its simplicity. It didn't involve yelling, or public humiliation, or drama. It was about the reveal, the slow, undeniable unraveling of their lies. And it would all begin with a toast. I wasn't going to stop the ceremony before it happened. No, I was going to let it begin. Let them think they'd made it, that they were safe. Then, and only then, would I deliver the truth, right in front of everyone they had so carefully fooled. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The morning of the wedding, I woke up before sunrise. I made myself tea, lit a candle, sat on the balcony and watched the sky change colors. It was one of those quiet mornings where the world feels like it's holding its breath. I felt powerful, unshakable. The makeup artist arrived first, followed by the photographer, then the bridesmaids. Laughter filled the bridal suite. Champagne was popped. I posed for pictures in a lace robe. My smile looked real. It even felt real, like the mask had fully molded to my face. Natalie arrived last. She rushed in, hair in loose waves, coffee in hand, already apologizing for being 5 minutes late. She looked at me like I was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen, and I almost laughed. She helped zip me into the dress. She cried. I handed her a tissue and told her I loved her. I didn't mean it, but she believed I did. My mother came in and kissed my cheek. She said she was proud of me, said she knew Daniel and I were meant to be. I almost felt bad. Almost. Just before the ceremony, Daniel's mom hugged me, her voice trembling. She whispered, "You're the best thing to ever happen to him." And that nearly cracked me. Not because I cared about Daniel, not anymore, but because she was innocent. She didn't deserve what was about to happen. None of the guests did, but collateral damage was inevitable. I took a deep breath, steeled myself. The music started. Guests moved to their seats. The string quartet played something soft and romantic. A hush fell over the vineyard. I stood just behind the doors, veil covering my face, bouquet in hand, and I felt everything slow down, like the moment just before a storm breaks, when the sky is too quiet, the air too still. Natalie was holding my train. Daniel was standing at the altar, smiling like a man who had already won, but he hadn't. Not even close. The music shifted, the doors opened, and I stepped forward. Everything felt suspended in time, the faces turning toward me, the phones lifted, the gasps of people seeing the dress for the first time. I barely heard it. All I saw was him, Daniel, smiling, waiting, and just beyond him, to the left, Natalie, in a pale champagne gown, bouquet in hand, wearing a smile that could have been pulled from a magazine cover. Soft, serene, deadly. Every step I took down the aisle was rehearsed, graceful. I had never felt more detached from my own body, like I was watching myself from a distance, playing the role of the bride in a story that wasn't mine anymore. But then, something happened. Something I didn't plan for. As I reached the front, just before Daniel took my hand, a phone buzzed. It wasn't mine. It was his. I saw him glance down, just for a split second, but I caught it, and that flicker of panic in his eyes, that was new, subtle, quick, but real. He took my hand anyway. We turned toward the officiant. I could barely hear what was being said. Something about love, loyalty, forever. But I was watching him, watching her. And she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at him. Then I saw it. The tiniest shake of her head. Barely perceptible. But it was there. She was signaling him. Something had gone wrong. And that's when I realized. He hadn't told her everything. He hadn't told Natalie about the joint account being drained. Or that I'd been acting distant. Or the questions I'd asked him in the last week. He told her just enough to keep her calm, but not enough for her to see the iceberg beneath the surface. I watched the color drain from his face. I smiled. And just as the officiant said, "If anyone knows a reason why these two should not be joined in marriage," I held up one finger. "I do." Gasps. Confusion. Every head turned. Daniel stiffened. "Before we go any further," I said, "I'd like to share a quick story. Just a little something I wrote last night." The officiant looked at me, puzzled. "Are you sure?" "I'm very sure." The guests laughed nervously. Some thought it was a joke. I looked at Natalie. She wasn't smiling anymore. Then I reached into my bouquet. Tucked beneath the flowers was the flash drive. I held it up. "This," I said, "is a playlist of sorts. A highlight reel of everything that led us here today." I handed it to the DJ and nodded. He plugged it in. The screen behind the altar, the one meant for our wedding slideshow, flickered to life. And then, the photos started. First, innocent ones. Daniel and me, the engagement, family gatherings. Then, Daniel and Natalie, at the resort, in the robe, leaning into each other. Gasps turned to silence. A message popped up on the screen. A screenshot of the email draft he never sent. "I can't keep doing this with you at her place. You said we'd talk after the wedding." "When?" I watched Natalie's entire body go stiff. Watched Daniel step back like he was trying to disappear. People started whispering. Some stood up. One of Daniel's cousins mouthed, "Holy shit." I let it play for only 60 seconds. That was enough. Then I turned back to the crowd. I want to thank you all for coming. Really. It means a lot. I know you expected a wedding today. And in a way, I think we still got one. I paused. A wedding is supposed to be about truth, about two people committing to each other with honesty, with loyalty. And today, I did that. I committed to myself. I took off the ring. Consider this my vow. I handed the ring back to Daniel, turned to Natalie, and smiled. By the way, I said softly, you were never better than me, just cheaper. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I walked down that aisle exactly the way I came, slow, calm, in control. The guests parted like the Red Sea. No one stopped me. I got into my car, veil still on, bouquet in hand, and for the first time in weeks, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was done. The final piece had been placed. They were exposed, publicly, elegantly, permanently, and I didn't have to say another word. I didn't hear from either of them that night. Not a single call, not a single text, but I knew it wouldn't last. Cowards always wait until the dust settles before they crawl out and try to rewrite the story. Sure enough, by morning, my phone lit up like fireworks. First, it was Daniel. Please, can we talk? You misunderstood everything. You embarrassed yourself, not us. Then, you humiliated my family. How could you do that? That one made me laugh out loud. How could I do that? Then Natalie tried. Her first message was short. You didn't have to go that far. As if there's a rule book on how to handle betrayal. Then a voice note. Look, I never meant for this to happen. You were always the one people admired. You always had everything. For once, I wanted something for me. I didn't think you'd find out. And when you did, I figured you'd be too proud to say anything. But doing it like that? On your wedding day? In front of everyone? That was cruel. I replayed that voice note 4 times. Not to feel guilty, but to remind myself just how delusional she really was. Cruel. Cruel was what she did. Taking my trust, my love, my future, and playing with it like it meant nothing. Cruel was smiling in my face while planning a life with the man I was about to marry. What I did? That was justice. I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I waited. Because I knew it wouldn't end there. And I was right. 2 days later, Natalie showed up at my apartment. She looked different. Smaller. Her hair was pulled back like she didn't want to be seen. No makeup. No smile. I didn't invite her in. She stood in the hallway and said, I need you to know that I'm sorry. I was stupid. I was lonely. I never thought he'd go along with it. I didn't think it would go that far. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time, I didn't feel pain, or rage, or betrayal. I felt nothing. I loved you, I said. You were my best friend, my sister. I would have done anything for you. She looked down, eyes glossy. But you? I continued. You saw me happy. And instead of cheering for me, you decided you wanted it too. And instead of finding your own, you stole mine. I didn't. You did. She swallowed hard. Do you love him? I asked. Her silence said everything. That's what I thought. She took a deep breath. Can we ever fix this? I smiled. Maybe, but not in a way that includes me. And I closed the door. It was gentle. No slamming, no drama, just final. Daniel, of course, wasn't ready to let go that easily. A few days later, he sent flowers, then letters, emails, even a voice memo saying he was willing to rebuild trust. It was almost impressive, the delusion, the idea that after everything, I would want to fix us. So I responded with the only thing I knew would shut him up for good. I sent him a PDF, titled Non-Disclosure and Settlement Proposal. Inside were photos, screenshots, financial records. A clear breakdown of how he would be refunding every penny spent on the wedding, including my dress, which I had already donated to a women's shelter, along with a note. You wanted to be the man I married. Consider yourself lucky I let you walk away instead. After that, silence. Beautiful, perfect silence. But the best part wasn't just shutting them out. It was watching the fallout. People talked. Friends took sides. Some were shocked. Others said they'd had a feeling. Daniel lost clients. Turns out some of his business partners were at the wedding. Natalie quit social media for a while after being called out in the comments of her last beach selfie. And their relationship never made it past the shame. They couldn't survive the weight of what they did. But me? I thrived. I took a solo trip, started therapy, took a break from everything. Planning, pretending, surviving. I went quiet. On the outside. But inside? I rebuilt. Brick by brick. Not for a man. Not for a wedding. Not for revenge. For me. Because I deserved more than survival. I deserved peace. And they deserved each other. People love to ask me what happened after. Not about the drama. They already know that. That part played out publicly enough. But about me. How I moved forward. How I healed. How I survived. And I always tell them the same thing. I didn't just survive. I came back to life. After the wedding that wasn't, I disappeared for a while. Not literally. I didn't move to another country or go off-grid. But I unplugged. I uninstalled social media. I ignored calls that weren't from my mother or my therapist. I took time for myself. Real time. Not the kind where you say you're doing better, but you're actually crying in the shower and scrolling through their new photos at 2 a.m. No. I made a rule. No looking back. The first thing I did was move. Same city, different apartment, smaller, simpler, mine. No reminders of him. No furniture we picked out together. No echoes of her voice laughing in the kitchen while pretending to be my best friend. It was just me. And for the first time in a long time, that felt good. I started building a routine that had nothing to do with anyone but me. I took early walks, tried new recipes, slept diagonally across the bed. I started journaling again, something I hadn't done since college. I filled pages with every thought I was afraid to say out loud. The grief came in waves, of course. There were nights I missed the fantasy. Not him, not her. Just the dream of the life I thought I was building. But dreams can become cages when they're built on lies. So I let go. I stopped trying to make sense of why they did what they did. I stopped trying to rewrite the past in my head, searching for the one thing I could have done differently. Because the truth is, I didn't fail. They did. They failed to honor love, failed to protect loyalty, failed to understand who they were really dealing with. And I walked away clean, with my dignity intact, with my name untainted. I gave them a stage to expose themselves. All I had to do was hand them the mic. Eventually, word got around. People stopped asking questions. Those who mattered reached out to say they admired how I handled it. Those who didn't faded into silence. Daniel moved on quickly, or at least tried to. I heard from a mutual friend that he was dating someone new, younger, but his business never fully recovered. Turns out, clients don't like being associated with scandal. Natalie moved back in with our dad for a while, tried to spin the story like it was complicated, that feelings don't follow rules. Maybe that's true, but character does. And when it came down to it, neither of them had any. I ran into her once, a few months after it all. I was at a bookstore, coffee in hand, finally at peace. She looked tired, pale. Her smile was forced. She said, "You look happy." And I said, "I am." She nodded, looked down at her shoes and said, "I miss you." I didn't respond. Not because I was trying to be cruel, but because I truly had nothing left to say. I didn't need her apology, or her tears, or even her regret. I already had what I needed, freedom. And in that freedom, I found something better than closure, reinvention. I went back to school, took courses I'd always put off. I started freelancing, working on projects that made me feel creative again. I learned how to be alone, and then how to love being alone. Eventually, I started dating again, slowly, carefully, not because I needed someone to fix me, but because I wanted to discover what healthy could feel like. One man asked me on our second date, "So, what's your craziest breakup story?" I smiled, took a sip of wine, and said, "Maybe I'll tell you someday, because I don't lead with that story anymore. It's not the first thing people need to know about me. It's not what defines me. It was just the turning point. The moment I stopped letting people decide my worth. The moment I stopped begging for love from people who were never capable of giving it. The moment I stopped shrinking myself just to keep others comfortable. That story? It may have started with betrayal, but it ended in liberation. Mine. A few weeks after the wedding that wasn't, I took a walk through the park where Daniel first told me he loved me. It was late afternoon. The sky was soft with clouds, the kind that looked like stretched out cotton. A few kids ran past me chasing each other. Someone nearby was playing acoustic guitar. Not a song I recognized, but slow, thoughtful, haunting. Everything around me felt peaceful, almost painfully so, like the world had no idea it had shattered just a few days ago. I found the bench where he and I used to sit. We'd spent hours here once, talking about the future, our house, our kids, what color we'd paint the walls, what names we liked. He said he wanted a golden retriever. I told him I wanted a cat that hated everyone but me. It was a different lifetime. I sat there for a long while, not thinking, not grieving, just being. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a photo, the last one ever taken of me and Natalie together. We were in a bridal boutique. I was wearing my dress for the first time. She was crouched down, holding the train, looking up at me and laughing. It would have been a beautiful memory, if it hadn't been a lie. I looked at the photo for a long time. I studied our faces. There's something brutal about realizing you didn't see the danger standing right next to you, but there's also something powerful in finally being able to say, I see it now. I stood up, walked to the nearest trash bin, and let the photo fall in. No dramatic music, no fire, no symbolic speech, just silence and release. I walked away without looking back. That's when I realized something that stayed with me. Letting go doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes the quietest goodbyes are the most permanent. I didn't need revenge anymore. Not really, because what I had gained was so much bigger. Freedom. After that day, everything started to shift. I stopped checking their social media. I stopped replaying old conversations. I stopped imagining alternate endings. I stopped needing explanations. I chose peace over closure. I moved into a smaller apartment in a different part of town. It wasn't anything special. Plain white walls, secondhand furniture, a tiny balcony. But it was mine. No memories, no ghosts. I bought myself flowers every Sunday. Started cooking for myself. Real meals, not frozen dinners eaten standing up. I lit candles at night for no reason other than it made me feel good. And every now and then, I would still get messages. People asking what really happened. People who had heard things. I didn't respond. Let them wonder. Because the truth is, I didn't owe anyone my pain or my story. And the people who mattered, they never asked. They just showed up, quietly, kindly, without demanding explanations. I started writing again. For myself, I filled notebooks with reflections, pieces of old memories, thoughts I was too scared to say out loud when I was still pretending everything was fine. I wrote about the girl I had been, the one who believed in forever, who loved deeply, who trusted blindly, and I forgave her. She didn't know better, but I do now. I also wrote about the woman I was becoming, someone smarter, calmer, more grounded, someone who didn't beg for love, but chose it carefully, especially from herself. Eventually, I started going on dates again. Slowly, cautiously, with no urgency. One man asked me what my wildest breakup story was. I just smiled, took a sip of wine and said, let's just say I've learned how to walk away like a queen, because I don't lead with that story anymore. It's not my headline. It's not my wound. It's just a chapter. An important one, yes, but still, just one part of the book. And if you're wondering how it all ended, it ended with me choosing myself. It ended with me walking away from people who thought they could lie and manipulate and take without consequence. It ended the moment I stopped needing revenge and started creating my own peace. And from that peace, I built a new life, one that's quiet, real, whole. So no, I don't miss the dress, or the venue, or the vows I never said. I don't miss the person I was before all this happened either, because now I'm someone who knows her worth, and I never needed a wedding to prove it. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved, just to protect yourself? Have you ever realized that someone you trusted was never really on your side? Because if you've ever felt the sting of betrayal, the ache of disappointment, the weight of pretending to be okay when you're breaking inside. Then you understand what this story was really about. It's not just about cheating, or betrayal, or revenge. It's about identity, about strength, about finally choosing yourself after being chosen last for so long. People think walking away is weakness, that silence is surrender. But I think it takes incredible strength to say, you don't get access to me anymore. So if you've ever been in my place, if you've ever had to cut someone out, even when it hurt, I want you to know, that wasn't you giving up. That was you growing. And if this story made you feel seen, even just a little, if it reminded you of something you went through, or something you survived, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever been betrayed by someone close? What would you have done in my place? And if you made it this far, thank you. Truly. That means you saw me, you listened, and maybe you even healed a little with me. So do me a favor. If this story hit home, leave a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe, because I have more to tell. And next time, it might just be your story I'm telling. Until then, be smart, be soft, be strong, and never, ever forget who you are.